Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist. Good morning, Tony Messenger.
Morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly. How's everybody doing?
Tony.
So we were expecting, or at least I was expecting, the report to be about two consenting adults who were cheating on their spouses and ultimately decided it was a bad deal, maybe a little salacious, maybe a little scandalous. I was not expecting a non-consensual, coerced relationship from our governor.
Yeah, it's a devastating report. I got a call from somebody not long ago who suggested to me that I should be more careful with use of the word lover in describing the woman who is clearly the victim in this case. And it was somebody who obviously was familiar with at least some of this testimony. And now that call makes so much more sense. This is a woman who, yes, became his mistress to some degree going on after he groomed her, after he appeared to, based on her testimony, physically assault her against her will in the very first encounter. I mean, what happened, what she describes, and what the House committee of 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats all found credible is a case of predatory behavior by the governor of Missouri. It was before he was governor, but it's shocking. And the thing that I'm finding in reaction from people is people who have been following this closely, people in politics, even people who tend to want to defend the governor, tend to want to say, this is an affair, this is Ted Kennedy, Bill Clinton, Gary Hart, etc. Even folks who tend to want to dismiss what they thought happened are now just shocked, and their eyes are opened. And it's changed the political equation for the governor. But I think, more importantly, I hope long term, it will open the eyes to some people about what happens in sexual assault cases. The story of this victim is the story of many victims who go up against powerful men and don't bring their cases forward because they don't want this sort of scrutiny. They don't want this sort of attack in the media. They don't think they can defeat their their powerful opponent. They don't think they can get a prosecutor to believe them. And look at this. In this case, there is a prosecution, but it's not for what appears to be the worst offenses in the incident that happened in the basement of the governor's home 3 years ago.
That's a great point. And Greg Ward is going to be on at the top of the hour to sort of go through the legalese of all this. You make reference to for those who didn't read it, he was going to the hairstylist for a while, stopped going, then came back, and she had some feelings. She was like, wow, I have a little crush on this guy. And while she was cutting his hair, he groped her and grabbed her crotch. And
at her place of business.
Right.
I mean, that was assault. People have been charged with sexual assault for that act.
Yes. And she said, what are you doing? And he was like, what are you talking about? According to her, what are you doing? I don't know what's going on. And then that sort of opened up the door. But when she's then just fast forward, I would recommend everybody reading the report, Tony, because I believe that it spells it out, it explains it, and it will answer a lot of questions as to why did she keep going back, why it was deemed not consensual, why she felt the need to go back, and what actually was consensual and what wasn't consensual.
Well, and here's the other thing that is clear in that report that is so important, and it's why I believe her. It's why I think we're learning as a society following the Me Too movement over the last year to more instinctively believe women who make these sorts of complaints against men. Reading this report is fascinating because you can understand why the House found her credible. not only is she incredibly detailed, she's self-critical in her own testimony. She goes over and says, maybe I made a mistake here. I recognize I don't know whether or not this was consensual. She gives the context of what happened. And then not only is there the audio tape that was made surreptitiously by her ex-husband, she spoke contemporaneously to friends of hers about what happened, and they validated her story to the House committee. It is incredibly credible testimony. And I tweeted something last night. I said, the governor issued two statements yesterday. First, he gave a preemptive strike of a news conference that was foolish on his part, in which he just calls it a witch hunt, attacks his victim one more time, re-victimizes her, and says, you're about to hear a bunch of things. They're all lies. And then, presumably, after some of his staffers read the report and realized how damaging it was, he issued a softer written statement later. Neither of those statements include the one thing that he needs to say if he wants anybody to believe him, and that is, I never hit a woman. We all grow up as men with fathers or mothers or somebody in our life who tells us at some point, if we're decent human beings, you don't hit a woman. And this testimony is clear that he did that more than one time, and he hasn't, other than his early statement saying there was no violence, there was no threat of violence. Now that these specific allegations are out there, he hasn't said, I didn't hit that woman.
Yeah,
and I think that's really telling.
It's in his preemptive strike. He said, it's all lies that I hit the woman when my wife was giving birth. That's a blatant lie. But he's almost saying, then the next sentence he should say, I only hit her in the apartment before my wife was giving birth, right? I mean, he's arguing the timeline, not the fact that he hit her.
He's trying to say, look, people are out to get me, people are attacking me, and he's missing the most important point. His victim never sought to bring this forward. His victim is being re-victimized again, and I apologize to her. I'm part of that. I'm in the media telling her story over and over again because she didn't want to bring this out, but her ex-husband created it. Her ex-husband's lawyer created it. The governor, through his own arrogance and possibly criminal behavior, created it. And so she's being victimized over and over and over again. And he's saying, well, these people are out to get me. And no doubt there are political operatives out there that are taking advantage of this situation, that are going after the governor. The governor's right about that. But the one person who matters the most, the victim in this case, isn't doing any of this on her own volition. She didn't want this to happen, and he's still attacking her and re-victimizing her again, and I find that to be the most disgusting thing about his statements yesterday, is he still doesn't get it.
Tony, Peter Kinder, Josh Hawley, now Ann Wagner, some other prominent state elected officials have come out and either called for him to resign or step down and or unfit to lead. What happens now down in Jefferson City?
I have thought from the beginning, this is not a man who resigns. He just doesn't have it in his DNA. He doesn't know how to do that. He thinks he can continue to say fake news, and hold on. And I tend to think he's going to continue to do that. Here's what I think is going to become the practical problem for him. His funding is going to dry up, and he does have a legitimate criminal problem to deal with. And keep in mind, this is an ongoing investigation relating to his dark money, relating to the alleged theft of the donor list of the nonprofit that he started. So his legal liability is growing, not diminishing. I think his dark money is going to start to dry up, and here's what I think is likely to happen that could lead to his resignation. I think his staff is going to start fleeing him. I believe that those people who were loyal to him, who he lied to, who he said this is just an affair, who have now read the report or are reading the report and are realizing, oh my gosh, we were deceived. This is much more serious than we ever thought. Those people are going to start fleeing, jumping ship, looking for jobs. And the governor's got to have staff to do his job. And ultimately, I think that is what might lead to his resignation. He doesn't care what Josh Hawley says or Ann Wagner or Claire McCaskill or any of the Democrats or any of the Republicans or Jay Barnes on the committee. He really doesn't care. He doesn't respect anybody else. But if he's got no staff and he can't do the job, I think at some point he has to tactically retreat, to use a phrase that he might understand, in order to try to just fight the criminal case and or cases against him.
Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist, STLtoday.com, and with us Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tony, thanks for coming in on a busy morning.